my gorgeous plant people, welcome back to Reading Mindfully. My name is Yana, and today we are taking a walk on the wild side, so let's get into it. Hey guys, like I said, so today I'm picking out some plants that just give me animal-like vibes. And so today I picked this video to do because a lot of times philodendrons and anthuriums get such press, so we say. They're so trendy and everyone's always talking about collecting. However, I wanted to pick out some plants that just give me pure animalistic vibes, and these plants I spread out in my collection because I just felt like it just reminded me of like creatures that would just like be on the prowl, or they would be like climbing on top of a tree, or just like also blending in. And so I just wanted to go ahead and take the time to show you guys some different plants, so let's hop into it. And first we'll start with some ferns. Now this is the bird's nest fern. Of course, this one you wouldn't really think like animal vibes, but these fronds remind me of like a fish tail or the fins of a fish when it's just like flicking in the water. And it just gives me such like, I don't know, childlike wonder to see this plant. And it's just so pretty. And even though it's just plain green, it is the fronds that really get me on this plant. So that is the first one. The second fern I have is the zebra fern, or I think this is also called a golden bamboo fern, but I'd rather call this the zebra fern because it does exactly remind me of a zebra. It has that zebra pattern. However, this would be the zebra if a zebra was like chartreuse and like a dark green. I think this would be a very pretty thing to look like. Now, I don't know if a zebra would be able to hide with this kind of patterning. It probably would be able to blend in, but this is just so beautiful. And the fronds come out so thick and just crinkly, and it has the most interesting texture to it as well. I'm not really sure how to describe it, but it's kind of like corrugated, I think. And it's a very interesting fern if you're able to get your hands on it. But yeah, the zebra fern. And the last one I of course had to include, this is the crocodile fern. Now, I don't have to explain why this one just reminds me of an animal, but the patterning on this one is just so beautiful. Of course, people have loved crocodile patterns forever since it's printed on so many different articles of clothing, but I'm not really interested in this pattern being on clothing. In fact, I don't really like animal prints on clothing, but if you put it on a plant, I will pick it up. And it also has that very crocodile texture to it. The fronds are nice and thick and very shiny. This one doesn't need any shining. It just comes out very shiny and glossy, and is why I also included this one on the list. Now, I decided that, of course, Marantas had to be on this list. And for Marantas, you would say, well, what kind of animal does this remind you of? Now, this is my Maranta silver band, and for some reason, this just reminds me of some kind of a fish. And I don't know why it reminds me of a fish. Maybe it's because of the silver veining that comes off from the side of the leaf, but it just reminds me of like how certain fish, I think it's like an angelfish or like the tigerfish, have those like long like whisker like things, and that is exactly what this reminds me of, especially this like feathering here that you have on the side of the middle of the plant. You just have this silver feathering, and that also reminds me of a fish. But yeah, I would definitely say that the Maranta silver band is one of those that reminds me. And then when you move the leaf like this, that's exactly how the fish is like reflective in the water. But I definitely had to add the Maranta silver band. Going along with that, I of course had to put the Maranta red vein on this one. And this leaf just is the epitome of just like animal-like vibes. And of course we have that red veining that comes off on the side, and if you get even closer you can see even the neon green that's in the middle. But of course I had to add this one. Of course, it reminds me of another fish. And then you even get some of these leaves that come in more lime green, but again, the patterning is just striking, and it just reminds me of one of those like tropical fish that you would see in the aquarium. And I couldn't say the red vein without saying the lemon lime. Again, we have this dark contrasting of the darker leaves, the older leaves, and we have this lighter green leaf here. If there was ever a fish that looked like this, I would definitely want to have this in my collection. I think fish and plants go well together, and that's why these patterns are just so beautiful to me. But yeah, this is of course a very beautiful plant. And there are several prayer plants that just remind me of animals. I'm not sure why a prayer plant has these very interesting patterns. One theory said that prayer plants moved because they wanted to be more inconspicuous in the jungle. But I would think if you had like these very striking patterns, that wouldn't be very inconspicuous. I feel like you would definitely stick out. But yeah, that's another one. I do have some philodendrons on this list, but not because they're very striking. It's just because they usually tend to have leaves that develop in the shape of animals. This one in particular kind of reminds me of like a dog head. This is the Thermatophyllum, or the Philodendron goldii. It's also known as a Thermatophyllum, but like I said, it just has this like dog head shape to the leaf, and that's why I just wanted to go ahead and include it on the list here. Now, there's nothing really more interesting about this plant, and even so, when it does grow up, it will lose this like dog-like shape head to the leaf, and I will show you what this plant does look like as a mature plant, but for now, it's going to be on the list. Some more interesting philodendrons would be this Philodendron squamiferum, and this one is because of the petioles mostly. Now this one I will have to get a close-up for you, just because I've had too many accidents with this plant ever since I've staked it. But again, it has this like horse head shape leaf to the leaves, and more interesting, it has this petiole that is also furry. It tends to be green, and then it shifts to a red petiole, which is very cool. I feel like it's some kind of like intriguing caterpillar, which I don't know if a caterpillar would, if it looked like that, would it be poisonous? Are caterpillars poisonous? I don't know, but I just feel like a red and green caterpillar would probably not be good for you to touch, but that is exactly what that plant reminds me of. And the petioles aren't exactly like furry. They're kind of more like, not prickly, but it's in the middle. It's in between like furry, like soft, and like prickly. It's kind of hard to describe, but if you have one, you'd know like what I'm trying to say. One that is more furry is the Philodendron fibrosum. And now this plant, it doesn't have any interesting leaf shape. It is actually quite boring. It's more of in the shape of a heart. But it is kind of satiny, which is very cool. The most notable thing about this plant is that the petioles are again furry, like I said about the Philodendron squamiferum. Now these tend to come out a lot thicker, and this is exactly what I would think of if I thought of a caterpillar. This would be like a green caterpillar. And the cool thing is that when this plant is a baby and it's more juvenile, the petioles are a lot thinner and not as furry. But then as it matures and gets bigger, so do the petioles. They get bigger, they get thicker, they get heavier, and they're a lot softer as well. And so you can see this last leaf here is one of the thickest and the softest and just the furriest, and it corresponds with it being the biggest leaf. But yeah, that is the Philodendron fibrosum. And like I said, the leaf isn't very much to look at. It is very pretty, at least in my eyes, but the stem is definitely where it brings a lot of intrigue. And then you see that even the sheaths are furry, but they're more orange or coral color. So that's pretty cool. Now we go back to prayer plants. We have a plethora of plants to choose from that just give us like those animalistic vibes. Now the next one is not very animalistic in like patterning or shape, but it is in texture, and this is the Calathea rufibarba. Now again, like I said, it doesn't have the shape, but it has the texture, and even the petioles on this are furry, which I didn't really notice about this plant, because when a lot of people talk about this plant, they talk about the leaves being furry, but it's also the stems are furry too. And if you zoom in really close, sometimes you can see the fur that's on these leaves. But it's just such a soft plant, such a furry plant. I'm not sure what this would be in the wild, but it is so cool. And now I try not to be like a leaf petter or someone that just like touches their plant, but sometimes this is just the one plant that just makes me go like, Like I just could sit there for a couple seconds and just pet this plant, and this one gets me all the time. But this is the Calathea rufibarba. A very beautiful one of my newest purchases is the Calathea cora. This one is so pretty. This is also called also nicknamed the peacock, which I just find like a lot of plants are nicknamed peacock. I find that a lot of plants are named peacock, and I'm not sure why, but this one is just so beautiful. It has those nice blushes of pink. Now, if peacocks in real life had this like blush pink, that would be so cool. But this is so pretty, and then it has that, of course, that eggplant that comes on the back of the leaves. But yeah, this is just such a pretty plant. And if this was an animal in real life, that would be one of the coolest animals in the jungle. And Tenanthe burlemarxii is another notable plant. It's also called the fishbone, which is so pretty. It looks like a fossilized fish. And this one, it depends on how much light you give this plant, but you see if it gets too much light, the pattern is more faded. It also doesn't have as much as that purple backing. Now if you give it less light, it has a very distinct pattern and more of that eggplant color. So this is definitely on the list as striking and animalistic. And this is the Tenanthe burlemarxii. I of course had to include the rattlesnake Calathea. This one is just definitely the one that you think of when you think of like jungle vibes. Reminds me of like a snake that is like slithering on the trees, on the branches. And I don't know, this one reminds me of the Jungle Book. Although the snakes in the Jungle Book don't have this cool eggplant backing, it definitely has that pattern that reminds me of a snake. Now this one also grows as slow as a snake moves, so maybe that's exactly why this is also called the rattlesnake, because it's just such a slow grower. But it is the most beautiful plant, one of the most beautiful Calatheas, and for that reason I keep it around. Next is the leopardina. Now this one isn't shown very often. Like I said, this is the Calathea leopardina, but again it has that same kind of patterning that is on a lot of the Calatheas, and it is also green on the underside, so it's nothing, it doesn't have as much interest as the other ones. But with this green patterning, when this plant gets nice and full and large, it is such a beautiful plant. If there was like a green leopard or some kind of animal out there, it would just be very impressive, very interesting. And it also grows pretty quickly as well. I've already gotten 2 leaves off this plant, but Again, if there was like a green leopard or a cheetah just hanging out in a tree, that would be so cool. The next one we have is this Calathea makoyana. This is probably the one plant that a lot of people think of when they think of like jungle vibes. This is also nicknamed the peacock or even cathedral to people who think of the backing on this plant. It just reminds you of a window pane, how it's reflective, how it mirrors on both sides. But this is like the epitome of a plant that would be in the jungle. And it is just so beautiful. The last Calathea would be of course the Calathea zebrina. Now this one doesn't have very much interesting things happening with the leaves. It is a little bit soft, but it's not as velvety or satiny as say the Calathea velvet touch, or even less furry as the rhubarba, but it is a very beautiful Calathea. Again, if zebras were green, this would be a cool animal. I would definitely want to have an animal like this, but it's just so cool. It will also remind me of like a frog, if these were like the eyes, and then I don't know, maybe my imagination is going off the charts, but this would definitely be a cool plant to have. And it would definitely add some jungle-like nature to my home. And one of the last plants is my Homolemina selby. This one is just so beautiful. I don't know why, but this one reminds me of like a frog, like a camouflage frog sitting on a tree bark, or just sitting on a tree, or even like a chameleon just trying to blend in. This one is so cool. Now I don't know about frogs and their texture because I don't touch frogs, but this one has a very like leathery, kind of thick cardboard like leaf to it, and so that's very interesting and cool. But again, like I said, this patterning here just reminds me of something that's trying to blend in into nature to try to run from any vicious predators. And the last one that kind of goes along the same lines of the Homolemina selby is the Scindapsus silver lady. It has that chameleon-like pattern to the leaves. It's so cool. And this one's more like a sea green than the the lime green, but this is just very beautiful. Again, it has that like thick leaf texture, like cardboard texture to the leaves, so it's just so nice. You can see how thick the leaves are. It's definitely thicker than some of the other Scindapsus, and it's a lot more rigid as well. But yeah, that is the Scindapsus silver lady. Alright, so you saw all of the plants that just give me like animal, wild vibes, jungle vibes. I add these plants in my collection, especially because I have a lot of plants that are just plain green. So when I add plants that have like striking patterns, it really makes my collection pop. It really makes my area pop, especially against all of my decor. I do have a lot of neutral decor, so adding plants like this just makes my home look more interesting, and I really enjoy it. I don't have a lot of other decor pieces, so this is just really what I need in my home. But comment down below if there are any other plants that I haven't mentioned that have this like animal jungle vibe. I'm interested to know. If you have any other suggestions or comments, please put that down below as well. But as always, I just want to thank you guys for liking and subscribing, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.